Good evening. Welcome back to the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. This evening, we've got a great show lined up for you. Stay tuned in the third hour from 11 to midnight Central Time. We're going to have a trivia contest. I have 10 questions. The first caller to call in with correct answers for all 10 questions will win a really cool prize pack. The prize pack includes Dead Space, the movie, Downfall DVD, which will be a Blu-ray version of that, and they'll also get the Dead Space Downfall video game. It's going to be a great prize package. It's for the PS3. Just a really cool setup. Again, the winner receives a Blu-ray copy of Dead Space Downfall and Dead Space from EA Games for the PlayStation 3. And we're going to be doing that at the top of the third hour. I've already given one question that'll appear in that hour. I'm going to give you one more. The first question I mentioned is name the 3 actors in the classic horror movie Burnt Offerings. Don't give me your answer on that now. That's going to be in the next hour. Also, here's another quick question for you that'll be in that top 10. Give me the name of Haley Joel Osment's character in The Sixth Sense. Those are going to be part of the questions that are in the 11 o'clock hour. Right now, though, if you'd like to win another copy of the movie, I'm going to give it away to the first 2 people that can answer this correctly. And again, the movie is about a holy relic that's been discovered, and it doesn't lead to heaven. Meet your maker with the release of Dead Space Downfall, the must-have feature-length movie prequel to one of the hottest new video games of the year. I've got this movie. It is awesome. Cool anime-looking style art. It's a continuation of the Image comic series. It's a great deal, and it's a bridge to the new video game. Dead Space Downfall is on DVD and Blu-ray high def today from Anchor Bay Entertainment and EA. First 2 callers that can correctly tell me the name of Sigourney Weaver's character in the movie Alien. All right, now we're going to go to our first guest for the evening, and it is a pleasure to have him join us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I've had an opportunity to meet this gentleman on a few occasions at different Mid-South Paranormal Conference, a couple of the different locations like that. Great speaker, always has interesting stuff to share with us. And he has a new book out. Steven LaChance is the author of a Haunted Survivor, I should say. His story was featured on the Discovery Channel's A Haunting and in the documentary film Children of the Grave. His experiences at the Union Screaming House inspired him to form the Missouri Paranormal Research Society. And Steven LaChance was forever transformed by the paranormal attacks that drove him and his family from their home in Union, Missouri. When another family falls victim to the same dark entity, Steven returns to that dreaded house to offer aid and find healing. Paranormal investigators, psychics, and priests are consulted, but no relief is found. The demon's presence, screams, growls, putrid odors, invisible shoves, bites, and other physical violations only grow worse. Steven chronicles how the supernatural predator infects those around it. But the one who suffers the most is the current homeowner, Helen. This is an amazing book. It's called The Uninvited. Steven, very pleased to have you on the show. Welcome to Darkness on the Edge of Town.
Well, it's great to be here, Dave, and it's great to talk to you again.
Now, let's start people at the beginning. Tell them about your story and how this started, kind of the prequel to this book. What is your story and how did you get involved? Let me ask you this first. Had you had any paranormal experiences in your life growing up prior to this?
I did, but, I always tried to dismiss them or put them away. I always ignored them. Hindsight's 20/20. Looking back now, I see that I'd always had stuff going on, and I just tried to ignore it, and I tried to find rational explanations for what was happening.
Right, which we all do, yeah.
Yeah. So it was interesting, but I found myself a single dad. He had 3 children, and we were living in an apartment, Dave, and it was very cramped. As a matter of fact, our balcony looked over a parking lot. It was not the ideal place for a father to live with his 3 kids.
Right.
So I went out looking for a house, and I found one, and it was in Union, Missouri. It kind of looked like your grandmother's house, the best way to describe it.
How do you know what my grandmother's house looks like, Steve?
Well, I kind of based it on what my grandmother, I guess. Right. But it kind of had that kind of feel to it,
Sure.
Like that when you stepped inside, you were at home, So it was May 18th of 2001 we moved in. As we were moving in, one of the car drove by with the neighbors in the car, and they stopped and they said, "We hope you do well here." And I kind of looked at my daughter and I kind of laughed and I said, "Nice neighbors." And I at that time I thought, well, they were just giving us a nice greeting, but it turned out that it was much more than that. Shortly after moving in, I would come home and I would find every light in the house on. And I didn't know what was going on. I thought, wow, the kids are leaving the lights on. So what I would do is I put the kids in the car one morning, and I said, you stay here. And I went in the house, and I made sure every single light in the house was off. And then when I came home that night, all the lights were on again. And that time I thought, well, I have a predator, or the landlord was coming in while I was gone. I called him and I asked him about it, and he said, well, no, I have to give you 24-hour notice before you can come in. And then my youngest son, started seeing things. I remember sending him downstairs for a garden hose, and he would scream, when I found him in the middle of the kitchen shaking. And from that moment on, every time he was out of arm's reach for me in the house, I would hear a scream, and there he would be shaking, telling me it was a monster of some sort chasing him, a ghost of some sort. And as a father, you go through that, it's the boogeyman, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, you got kids, you know what I'm talking about.
Of course, I love to torment my children with supernatural tales.
Right, and you try to rationalize it. Every kid is afraid of the basement monster, right. And then my daughter started coming down to where we were sleeping, because the boys were sleeping with me because I had just ordered them beds because they had a bunk bed that was messed up, and I just ordered them the bed, so they were sleeping with me until the beds arrived. And she walked into the room. I remember the night, and she said, my closet door is opening and closing, and there's boxes moving around upstairs. And at that point, here I am. I have 3 kids in bed with me, and I'm wondering, what did I do wrong?
Now, had you actually witnessed this yourself, or was it at this point just the kids telling stories?
At this point, it was just the kids. So I'm, at this point, Dave, I got to tell you, I was thinking, maybe it was the move. How kids react differently to the move. Right. Obviously, there were some issues, I thought, because, their mother had left us. I thought maybe that was coming to surface. I didn't know what was going on. I questioned it. And, I was a corporate trainer, and I would used to play a game with them or something, and we'd turn the television off every night before I would go, because I'd be gone a week at a time, sometimes 2 weeks. And I remember the first night that we were in the house, I was going to go on a trip. The boys were getting Monopoly ready, and my daughter. And I looked up, because I was sitting in the living room, and there was a family room in front of me, and I could see the kitchen door. And I looked up in the kitchen door, and there stood a black figure of a man. I looked down. I thought, well, they're getting to me. I'm going to look up. This thing's going to be gone. And I looked back up, and it moved into the room in front of me, and it dissipated. Well, at that point, I decided, well, what am I going to do? I needed to get out of there. Obviously, my belief system was crashing. I was shaken. But I didn't want to scare the kids. I didn't want to be the Lutzes in the middle of the night running out of the house, that thing. So I told them, I said, let's go get a soda and go to Grandma's house. So that's what we did, and as we were going out the door, and the boys were giving me trouble because they wanted to play the game. As we were going out the door, it was an old house, and I stuck the key in the door and had to turn it from the outside. And as I put the key in the door and started to turn it, a scream came up from the house. And it was a male scream. It was loud. It was tortured. Think of someone being stabbed. And at that point, we were on the run. And we went to my parents' house, obviously.
Right.
And I explained to them what happened, and they couldn't understand it either. I had to go out of town, and I was out of town for a week. And this is the thing, because people always ask me, why did I go back at that point? Because I had nowhere else to go. I didn't want to be homeless. I had been homeless before. When my wife had left us, she left us homeless. That meant going to live with Grandma and Grandpa, and I didn't want to do that again. I had just spent all of this money to move.
Right, well, that's funny. We've asked that question in the past of, my God, you hear this stuff happening and something tells you to get out. Why the hell don't you get out? But it's not that easy.
It's not that easy.
You've sunk your money into a home that you're trying to build for your family, and something starts mussing with you, and sometimes you just take you make a stand.
Well, I always tell people, we rationalize things every day. You know, every time you step off your porch in the morning, you rationalize that you're going to come back safely.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every time you get on a plane, you rationalize that plane's going to land safely. You know, so, you know, that week I just kept rationalizing it. You know, by the time that the plane hit the ground on Friday, I was ready to go back. And I got the kids from my mom's, and my parents were looking at me like I was crazy.
Right.
You know, the kids were even looking at me like I was even crazier. And, you know, and that's the hard part, because I convinced them that everything was going to be all right. And it wasn't. You know, we were there for 2 days. Things went pretty normally. On the third day of being there, it was in the evening, and we had been to a barbecue at my parents' house, and we had come back, and the kids were staying in one room. They wouldn't go to their different rooms. They were staying in my room downstairs. And there was 2 doors to that room that were open, one at the bottom of the steps and one at the living room. And they were playing, you know. And I sat down in my chair. Everybody's got a favorite chair. I sat down in mine, and I kind of dozed off.
Right.
And I woke up because the phone was ringing. It was my mom, and she was asking me how things were going. And I said everything was going all right. And at that point, I heard the doors shake. Now, I'm not talking about one door. I'm talking about every door in the house shook. You know, and at first I thought it might be the boys up playing, you know, and so I told them to cut it out. The door shook again, this time a little louder. I said, cut it out. My mom said, what's going on? I said, well, I think the boys are up trying to, you know, play a game. And this time it shook a little harder. And it was like the proverbial scary movie, you know?
Right.
You know, each time it was a little louder, a little louder. And then my daughter yells from the bedroom. She says, Dad, she says, my brothers are asleep and I'm in here. What's going on? And at that point, all hell broke loose. The doors to the bedroom slammed shut. There was a booming noise, which I now understand what that booming noise is, because John Zaff has explained it really well to me. At one point, he said when these things give off an amount of energy, it's almost like a sonic boom that goes through the house. There was like an earthquake, and I was up on the run, and I could hear something coming down from the stairs, and I thought, well, I'll take the living room door. And I got to the door, and it wouldn't open. My daughter was screaming on the other side of the door. I could hear her screaming, and I tried to open the door. And you know, you've met me. I'm a big guy.
Right.
You know, I'm a football player type, you
exactly.
know. And I started throwing myself against the door to open it.
Now, let's stop right there. We'll let people kind of digest on this fact. We're going to take our first break of this hour. We'll come back with the rest of your story, okay?
Okay, sounds great.
So stay tuned. You guys, we're just starting off. We're talking with Steven LaChance, the author of The Uninvited, talking about his paranormal experience in a very frightening home with a very frightening malevolent spirit. We'll be back with more. Good evening. Welcome back to Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. This evening on the phone with us, we have Steven LaChance, and we're talking about his book, The Uninvited. Before we went to break, we were right at the point Steven was explaining to us about the fact that he was basically barricaded away from his daughter, who was screaming on the other side of a door. Now, Steven, I'm 6'1". I had the chance to meet you in person a couple of times, and you're a big boy.
Yeah, I am.
You're what 6'4"?
About 6'7", actually.
Oh, holy crap, 6'7".
Yeah.
All right, so you're about 6'7". You're like built like a football player. You're a big guy, not fat, just a big guy, and you're knocking on a door. This door should just give way.
It should just give away. Any other door would have.
Personally, if I was a door seeing you coming towards me, I just open myself for you. But that's me. I'm different that way. So your daughter's screaming. Now, how does this? First of all, are you feeling angry? Or is there fright? What's the feeling? Because I'll tell you what, as a father, if there's got to be that anticipation, that holy bleep moment when you realize that something is scaring the hell out of your kids. So you've got that tingly sensation of you're about to open the door, and it could be kind of freaky for you as well. But what's more in control, fear or anger, when your daughter's on the other side screaming for help and trying to get through that door?
You know, fear's not there. When your child is screaming and you can't get to them, it's anger. It's all kinds of feelings run through your body. But the main thing in your mind is you want to get to them. You want to get to them no matter what cost. You know, and that's what I was feeling at that moment. You know, whatever it took, you know. And, you know, at that point, I started throwing my body against the door. And, and I over and over and over again. And, the thing is after the event was done, my right side was bruised from top to bottom from where I was throwing myself against the door. It was like concrete, and it's the best way I can describe it. And everything was going on, the booming was happening. It felt like an earthquake in there. She's screaming. And at one point I screamed, "God help me." I don't know why I did it. It just came out, and at that point the door opened. And my boys woke up, and they were running out the door. I ran to my daughter, who was in shock at that point. I picked her up. I carried her out of the room. And there was that other door that was at the bottom of the steps behind us. Mm-hmm. That door slammed open. And I didn't turn around to see what was at my heels. And we just got out. We parked up at the top of the road because my parents were obviously coming. My mom had heard everything that was going on. And I could look down at the house, and it was summer. So, you had the windows open, it was light. And I could see in the house that there was a black mass, the kids saw it too, that was kind of going from room to room, almost like it was looking for us. So that was the last time the kids went in the house. That's, after that it was like, forget it.
Now, okay, so how long have you owned this house at this point?
At this point, it was a rental.
Rental. Okay, how long have you been there?
At this point, we actually, I'd say we were there we were in the house a total of 13 days. That we actually lived there. The give and take, I was gone for a week, so probably about 20 days tops.
Really? So for just 20 days, you have this kind of vile activity, and you said this was the last straw. The kids did not go back to that house,
No.
Period?
Yeah, absolutely not. At that point, it was like, forget it. This is not worth it. I called the landlady, and I had talked to her, and we weren't going back.
Now, I have Susan Cummins, our book critic, is in, and actually I'm going to give her the copy of your book to read so we can have that reviewed in another week or so here, Stephen. But she has a question for you as well. Go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, Stephen, I know that your neighbors gave you a not-so-subtle warning when you were moving in.
Right.
Did you find out about the history prior to? How long did people stay before they were chased out, or were you the first?
I was not the first. There was a family right before me, and I actually, got the advantage of meeting them. He was another big guy, which is pretty funny. And he told me that he used to wake up in the morning and he would have human bite marks on his calves and scratches down his back. And I mean, this guy started telling me the story, and he started crying.
Oh my!
And I was floored at that point, because I realized at that point that, this had probably been going on for some time. Because it was really weird, too, because the neighbors, my daughter came in one day and she said, "Dad, you got to come out here and see this." And and I said, "What?" And she goes, "Just come out and see it." So we sat on the porch and she said, "Sit down." And the people walking down the street would get to the property line and they would cross the street.
Wow.
And it almost became a game with us, because I can remember her giggling, every time somebody would cross the street, they would not walk in front of the house. I'm pretty sure they knew what was going on. I can't imagine when that house screamed that they didn't hear it, because the dogs in the neighborhood heard it. They all reacted. So
now, did I just hear you said the house screamed?
Yeah. When I was putting the key in the door that first night after I saw it, it screamed. It literally screamed. It sounded like a man that was being tortured. I don't know how else to say it. I think of stabbed, murdered, the worst kind of thing. It was agonizing. It was the most agonizing thing I've ever heard, and it was male. And that's what said my kids and the kids at that point knew, there's something major going on, and that's what set us on the run the first time.
Oh, that's just unnerving. I mean, again, we mentioned at the beginning, too, I'm a father, and to be put in this situation where you're trying to establish a home, trying to maintain control, and I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than not being able to feel that you can effectively protect your children.
Right.
And how do you go up against something that's unseen?
Well, that's just it. How do you deal with it? And that was my thing. At the ending point, it was just, this is something I can't deal with. I had to put up the flags. I'm done. It's, how do you deal with something that you can't deal with? If it's strong enough, Dave, look at it this way. If it's strong enough to lock my kids in a room from me and not let me bring that door down, what else was it strong enough to do?
Yeah, that's an amazing moment for you. Now, yeah. So you start to do this. When did you think, okay, screw this now? I mean, were you trying to convince yourself you're going to go back in and take control of the situation and try to take back your home? No. Or were you just in survivor mode and, hey, let's cut our losses and just find a new place to live?
Yeah, it was cut our losses.
Now, were you familiar with the Amityville horror case at that point, other than just watching the movie?
Other than watching the movie, not really.
Okay.
I was always one of those kids that my mom would never let me see, I wasn't allowed to watch the Amityville, or I wasn't allowed to see, The Exorcist or anything like that. They were very protective, I guess, in that way. And I'd never really, been down that road with Amityville until later. Of course, later is when I started looking into it, and I became very interested in it. And to see, well, what this person said happened to them. Because, the one thing that you try to do when you live through something like this is you got to get validation, and it's very hard to get validation on your experience alone. You go out searching for others that had lived through it, like Carmen Reed. Carmen Reed became a good friend of mine, where I could talk to her. Back and forth, we emailed it back and forth, and she would discuss these things with me. Denise Jones, obviously. Right. Was one that I could talk with. And Tim Yancey, with the Amityville. You go out looking for that validation. You have to get it in some way.
Well, Steven, we're going to take our break here at the bottom of the hour, and we'll come back and talk a little bit more with you. If people want more information about you and to order your book, what website can they go to find this information?
The best websites to order the book is Amazon.com. Barnes & Noble is featuring the book now. It's on the second table in Barnes & Noble when you go in, and it's at every major bookstore across the United States and around the world.
All right, very cool. I recommend everybody pick up a copy of the book. It's an amazing book, fantastic read. I hate to glamorize it. It's not a great story as in, hey, what a great story. I mean, but it's just fascinating to read that somebody went through what they did and that you had the balls to go back in and try to help another family with that. We'll come back. We'll cover more of that story with you in a few minutes, Stephen. I also want to make a quick mention. We still have a trivia question going on right now, and what we've got to give away is Dead Space Downfall on DVD. It's a brand new movie. A holy relic has been discovered, and it doesn't lead to heaven. Meet your maker with the release of Dead Space Downfall, the must-have feature-length movie prequel to one of the hottest new video games of the year. If you're interested in getting a copy of that movie, you can call in right now. We've already got one winner. We need one more. Give me the full name of Sigourney Weaver's character from the movie Alien. I want to mention, too, we had winners in the last question with who is the voice of the Crypt Keeper from Tales of the Crypt. The answer is John Cassier. And we had Brenda Furness and Gerald Kennedy are the winners on that. And John Cassier is going to be live here in Minnesota at Crypticon horror convention. We're also going to have Chris Sarandon there, who did the voice of Jack Skellington. He was Prince Humperdinck from Princess Bride. He was also the creepy vampire in the movie Fright Night. Cool guest list coming up, so you're going to want to check that out. Go check out darknessradio.com, get all the information, and come on out to Crypticon. It's going to be taking place in November, November to Dismember. You're going to want to be a part of that. Also joining us, a good friend of Darkness Radio, Kelly Maroney, one of the stars from the hit cult classic film Night of the Comet, also Chopping Mall, and you'll recognize her from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Get all the information again at our website. We'll have a banner up there for you as well. We'll be back with more. And remember, if you want to be in a part of that trivia contest and win a copy of the movie right now, you can tell us the full name of Sigourney Weaver from the movie Alien. Remember, at the 11 o'clock hour to midnight, we're going to be taking your calls. Tell us your true ghost stories, your true examples of what's happened to you, whether it be you, family members. Give us a call. You can do that after the top of the hour. We'll be back with more right here on Darkness Radio. Good evening. Welcome back to the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Our guest this evening is Steven LaChance. He's the author of a brand new book that's out there. It's an amazing book. It's called The Uninvited. You're going to want to pick this up. Check out Steven's website at StevenLaChance.com. There's links for it right on our website. Hey, be here for the third hour. We're going to take your calls. We're opening up phone line. Call in with your calls if you are interested in telling us your true ghost stories, things that have happened to you. We'd like to hear that. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do right now. Stephen, give me just 1 minute. I'm going to read off the questions for the charity, or I'm sorry, for the charity. My mind is totally melted down. For the contest, trivia contest, I'm going to read off these 10 questions, and we're going to take the first callers after the top of the hour. So don't call in now. It'll be after 11 o'clock. Here are the trivia questions. Name the 3 main actors in the classic horror movie Burnt Offerings. Okay, question number 2. The Reapers feed on what 2 things in the movie Blade 2? What was the final body count by the end of Friday the 13th, the first movie? Okay, so what was the final body count at the end of Friday the 13th, the first movie? Here's a good one. When Freddy calls Nancy in A Nightmare on Elm Street, what part of Freddy comes through the phone? Okay, so again, when Freddy calls Nancy in A Nightmare on Elm Street, what part of Freddy comes through the phone? Our 5th question, what Dawson's Creek actress also appeared in Halloween H2O? Now here's a multiple choice. What classic horror movie did Clint Eastwood have a cameo role in? Was it The Blob, Revenge of the Creature, or I Was a Teenage Werewolf? Okay, Johnny Depp returns to the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise series in which of the movies in a cameo role? Again, Johnny Depp returns to the Nightmare on Elm Street. He was in the very first one. He comes back in which movie of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies did he come back into a cameo? Also, last couple here. What classic character on the TV series Bewitched reprised his role in the supernatural-themed soap opera Passions? What is the name of Haley Joel Osment's character in The Sixth Sense? And finally, there were 10 Friday the 13th movies, not counting Jason versus Freddy. There were 10 Friday the 13th movies. In how many of them was Jason the killer? The person that can get us the most answers correct in the next, by the 11 o'clock hour, from 11 to 12, we're going to be taking your calls. If you can get all of them right, you will win the prize pack tonight, which is a grand prize. You're going to get, and this is a cool setup, it is a Blu-ray copy of the movie Dead Space Downfall, and you're going to win Dead Space, the video game for PS3 by EA Games. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're also going to be taking your calls after the top of the hour to hear your personal ghost stories. We're going to go back to our guest, Steven LaChance. We're talking to him about his book, The Uninvited. Now, Steven, let's fast forward a little bit. You've gotten your family out of this home. How long are you out of this home before you realize things are starting to go bad for the next family?
How long were you, pardon me, I'm sorry.
How long were you out of your home that you're renting before you realized that the next family was starting to deal with things as well?
Well, you know, my father had stopped by to pick up my mail. There was a family between the ones that I helped, and he had asked, they asked them if everything was going all right, and they had told him that there was activity going on.
So wait, so after you moved out, another family moved in, they moved out, and then the family you went in to help was the family after that?
Yeah, it was the one after that.
So how long was the family between the two of you there?
They lasted about 3 months. There was actually 2 families before the one I went in to help.
Wow.
Yeah, and they each one lasted about 3 or 4 months. You fast forward to 2004 now. They moved in, the family that I went to help moved in 2002.
Now, when you moved out, did anything follow you? Did you have any problems?
Absolutely, nightmares.
Okay, just nightmares of the experience, but nothing.
Well, no, it was a nightmare. It was the same nightmare. I would walk down the basement steps. I would see a candle burning. I would hear water running, and I would walk around the corner, and there would be a man in the shower, and he would be washing off something. And as I got closer, I realized he was washing off blood. And it was the same nightmare. And I would have this nightmare 3 or 4 times a week. So I wasn't getting any sleep. Actually, Dave, I thought I was losing my mind for a while.
Wow.
I really did. I went through sleep study. And they told me in the sleep study, I said, well, they found out that I suffered from apnea. And I thought, wow, this could explain maybe the nightmares. And, I started talking to the doctor, and he goes, no, Stephen. He goes, you quit breathing once every 60 seconds when you sleep. He goes, you don't get into deep enough sleep to be even dreaming. And I was having these nightmares,
Wow.
And it was a really freaky thing. So that lasted from 2001, 2004, I'm doing this. And I there's no explanation. My family thought I was losing it.
Did you ever find out what did you think he was washing off?
Well, I thought it was, it was very clear to me he was washing off blood. Mm. It was a very dark substance, let's put it that way. In my mind, in the dream, I was sure it was blood. There's no doubt in my mind. And it was strange. I never saw his face. But I could feel the eyes. You could feel somebody staring at you.
Right.
I could feel the eyes staring at me. And it was a really freaky experience, The dream actually stopped when I went back into the house in 2004.
All right, so now let's get to that point. What brings Steven LaChance? You got your family out of there because of the horror. You've now lived all this time, and you keep having horrific nightmares that you still feel are tying you to that home.
Right.
As a father, again, preservation is number one in my category. I really don't know that I could put myself in harm's way for my kids to help somebody else's family. So I got to applaud you on that. That's amazing. But what drew you back in to feeling this is something I've got to confront and I've got to be a part of?
I had a friend that wanted to go to the house, and I told her where it was, and she got lost, and she actually ended up at the house and she didn't know it, and there was a woman in the yard, and she asked the woman, she goes, I'm looking for, she goes, well, a haunted house in this neighborhood, and the woman actually was Helen, said, I think you're talking about my house. And started telling her some of the experiences they were having. And she took some pictures of the house. And the thing that got me was the one picture that she took were of two small children, one about 9 years old, which was a boy, and a female about 12. And when I saw those pictures of the children, that's kind of what drew me back. Because I remembered, there's a life-changing event when you take your child out of a situation in shock, and I kept seeing those children, and the fear was that it was going to happen to them, and obviously there was things going on, so that's how I met Helen, and we started talking, and in the process of talking, it wasn't like the Discovery show where I showed up at the door like the ghost welcome wagon, your house is haunted, we was phone conversations at first. And she was explaining to me the things that were happening to her family. Gutters were catching on fire. She took her granddaughter up to see a new kitten that was upstairs. And when she got up there, the kitten's back was broken. There was stuff like that. Her daughter's dolls, she would go upstairs and all of the hair would be gone. Something had cut the hair off her dolls. Her grandson was trying to go down the stairs one day, and he was pushed by something unseen. And he was severely hurt, by the way, concussion and everything. So, it was obvious that these kids were being targeted, too. And that's what drew me back. So we went looking out for, see if we could find some help. And who actually we went to was Betsy Belanger, who runs St. Louis Spirit Search. It was the first one we went to. And she runs the Lump Mansion. Ghost tours there. Betsy came in, and I remember that, that was the first time I stepped back in the house. And I remember, there's a couple things I remember about that day. I remember my daughter looking out the window as I was getting ready to drive away, and she was telling me to be careful. And I remember driving up to the house, and I remember shaking. I sat there shaking for a minute, and it took everything I had to get out of that car.
All right, well, that's a good break point. Let's take that. We're going to come back and wrap up with your story here, Stephen, okay? Amazing stuff. Again, the book is called The Uninvited by Steven LaChance. You can get that on Amazon.com. We'll be back with more and more of Stephen's story right after this. You're listening to Darkness Radio. Hey, good evening. Welcome back to the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. We're going to open up the phone lines after the top of the hour. We're going to be having your stories, so you can call us in it if you have ghost stories, if you want advice on what's going on in your home, or if you just want to talk about personal experiences you've had with UFOs, ghosts, Bigfoot, any kind of creepy subject. Feel free to call us in the next hour. We also have the trivia contest. I gave out the questions. We'll be doing that again after the top of the hour. First one to come in with the first answer, or all correct answers, is going to win our prize pack. Let's go back in. We have about 6 minutes left with you, Stephen.
Okay.
Let's tempt them a little bit more with this book. Now, you go back in and you find out this family is also dealing with things.
Right.
Where do you go?
Well, we went for help. We went to Betsy. Betsy came to the house. It was July 2nd, 2004. And I remember the night that she came in, she was in the house upstairs. There was a breezeway, and she was in there maybe 10 minutes. She could feel something. Betsy's a psychic, by the way.
Okay.
She could feel something coming into the house. She was in the house upstairs 10 minutes, and something came rushing by us. She could actually feel it, Dave, and actually threw her against the wall. She also at that point told us there was a vortex in the home. That she couldn't tell people to not live in the home. There was a lot of things that she went through that it just didn't make sense at the moment. Later they did. She talked about psychological counseling and everything too, to deal with everything that had happened to the families. At that point it didn't make a lot of sense. Later on it did. But the most important thing to talk about is Helen. Helen was, the mother, the neighborhood mother, the kind of mom that all the kids go to. Right. She'd meet you with a cup of coffee and a piece of cake. What I saw from 2004 to October of 2005 is I saw this woman completely turn into a monster. And there's no other best way to explain it. She went from nice to, on October of 2005, on Halloween, 8 a.m., I have a knock on my door, and she is screaming, calling me every name in the book. I look out the window, and I could see she had something behind her back. I didn't know what it was. Her eyes didn't look right. Her eyes were black. I went to the door, and as I got to the door, my cats, I have 2 cats, and I looked down at my feet, and both of them were hissing at the door. I was going to open the door because I thought, well, the police are going to be here any minute. And once I saw the cats, I went, no, I'm not opening the door. Right. And it was a good thing I didn't, because she had a gun behind her back. Oh. And what she was going to do, and later we found out that, well, she claims that the spirit was sitting on her bedside, and what it was telling her was to kill me. On that day, she was supposed to shoot me in the head, and then she was supposed to go to the Union House, and she was supposed to hang herself in the basement. Obviously, she didn't get to shoot me. But later that afternoon, I talked her from suicide. And it was very strange because, in the conversation, I knew I wasn't talking to her. Right. It was different. You could tell. One thing, she didn't like things around her neck. She had told me that one time. So I knew that the last thing in the world that she would want to do is hang herself. Right. So I told her to look at her daughter because her daughter was there. At that point, she told me to keep her on the phone because she had told her that if she got there, if anybody tried to help, she would be dead before the police got there. So her daughter got to her, and I told her to look in her daughter's eyes and see what she was doing, and it actually brought her down. And we actually were able to put her in an institution, to get her help. And that was the second time that she went in. The first time I got her, took her to the hospital, was the house was acting up, and she was claiming she tried to kill her husband. And her blood pressure that day was 209 over 196. Her pulse was at 45. As we were sitting there in the emergency room, it was dropping to 35, and she was just sitting there talking like you and I would. It was really strange. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what was going on with her. What was sure is if I hadn't got her to the emergency room that day, she would have died. They put her in for a matter of a week. During that time, she tore a payphone off the wall and threw it across the room. Wow. She was strong, completely different. So, we had clergy involved, psychological counseling involved, and over a period of time, she got better. And after leaving the house, obviously, it helped a lot, too. And today, she lives a normal life. She's completely the person that I met in the beginning. But, it was the strangest thing I ever saw.
And now, do you do follow-up? Don't give us the answers now because we want to save this a little bit. But do you do follow-up? Do you let the readers know what you found, why the house was haunted, why you believe the house is haunted?
There's a lot of reasons, and I do let them know.
Okay. And do you also give an answer to what's happened, and is the house still there at this point? And
right, it is still there.
And
the last time I heard from the landlord she wrote me. I was written an email that said, I can hear the little children. This was the family that moved in right after Helen, and it was strange. She said, I can hear the little children running around upstairs. Their parents are going to have to stop them from doing that soon. She goes, I can hear their little angel screams. She goes, I hope their guardian angel is watching over them tonight.
Oh, my.
And at that point, I was sure that this landlord knew what they were doing. And I wrote him and I said, I never want to talk to you again. Don't email with me with anything. I just don't want to discuss it anymore. The family that lived there, that family lasted from November to March. The next family lasted for 2 years. So, it's hard to explain why these things work the way they do, but that's how it worked out.
Well, Steven, I can't thank you enough for spending time with us this evening. It's a fascinating book, great read. It's riveting, frightening. Again, the name of the book is The Uninvited, written by author Steven LaChance. Steven, thank you very much for being a part of the show this evening.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Dave.
Thank you, sir. And thank you all for tuning in. Stay with us. We have another hour left of the show. We're going to take your call. Call us with your scary stories. Have you ever experienced a haunting in your home? Tell us about it. We'd like to know a little bit more. We'll be back. You're listening to Darkness Radio.